Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and today we're going to talk about a deep subject, the hidden meaning of Rosh Hashanah, the new year. Now many people know, and I always like talking about the basic ideas of what Rosh Hashanah is. Now the Jewish calendar doesn't go according to the regular calendar, meaning New Year's is not January 1st, but it is on, first of all, it's not on a solar calendar, but it's on a lunar calendar. So that's very important. So it's not going to be September 1st every year. It's a lot of times you have different calendars, July 1st, that they have in businesses, that they have their different calendars when their business starts or their year starts. But it's the lunar calendar. So it's going to be, if you could just follow any lunar month, it's going to be on a new moon in September. Now, what does a new moon mean? A lot of times people think, well, a full moon, it's a beautiful moon, but that's not correct. A new moon actually means there's no moon, or there's a moon there, of course, but it's not to be seen is more correct. Now, this is very interesting if you think about it. Why should the new year, you would think you want a new year, just again, compared to January 1st, things are lively and people are dancing and there's parties all over. And let's compare and contrast to that. Rosh Hashanah, you say there is no moon. It's like not lit up. You say a full moon, everything's lit up at night. No, it's very, very dark at night. And what is the reason for that? And it's very interesting because, again, compare and contrast that many times that, you say, well, New Year's, let's have a party. And in the Jewish year, it's very solemn. It's actually very interesting. Everybody loves a story. Rav Levi Yitzhak Barditchev once had an incident, and he always argued with God. And you'd say, let's things better. Like you'd have a defense attorney. Why are the Jewish people impoverished? Why are they suffering such anti-Semitism? Why are their lives so harsh? So he'd always argue with God, and he was a holy man. It wasn't a joke. He was a very holy man, and he was trying to elicit some chesed, you say in Hebrew, some kindness to the Jewish people. There's a lot of kindness going on, but to better their lot. So in any case, this is a story in that vein. That here Rabbi Levi Yitzhak was under the beginning of the new year. Now again, in every Jewish day, like Friday night for Saturday, starts at sunset. I know many people get that wrong. It's Saturday is the Jewish Sabbath, so it should start at midnight. That's when Saturday starts, 12:01 midnight. But by Jewish calendar, it's not that way. It starts from the night before, and it's sunset. So he's looking around sunset Rosh Hashanah. He's looking under the benches. So the sexton, the gabbai of the synagogue, the holy rabbi is looking for some, maybe lost something. So he asked Rabbi Levi Yitzhak, hello, that maybe I could help you. Tell me what you lost and I'll look for it too. He says, I didn't lose anything, but I was just looking for someone who's drunk under the benches for the Rosh Hashanah before the new year. And the sexton was drunk? Rosh Hashanah, it's again, like I said, a solemn, serious day of the year, the day of awe, and people are going to get drunk and just party around. So he says, no way. And then Rabbi Levi says, see, Rabbonu Shalom, master of the world, that's on your solemn day, people do take it very seriously. They're not partying, they're not goofing off. They're actually come to synagogue and you pray extra, and you should decide to be a better person than you were the year before. Again, it's a very serious holiday. And that's what he wanted to mention to the Almighty, and that is true for all of us over here, that we try to be good and that elicit that kindness of God, saying, hey, you're good people, I'll take care of you. Now that's Rosh Hashanah. They're pleading for the new year, and you say a new year, a new slate. Like maybe you can compare it to a new contract. Let's say you have a contract, once a year contract, so you have to go to the boss and tell him, well, I did this right, that right, I want another year contract. Maybe a baseball player, even though they get 3-4 year contracts, but a year contract, hey, I did a good job, keep me on the team for another year at least. So that would be your basic Jewish idea. Now on a deeper level, which we're dealing with here, the hidden level ideas, that really God is the king. And what we want to do, and one of the spheros, one of the godly 10 spheros, is Malchus, which means royalty or kingdomship. And when that happens, it's just that we have to make God as king. So again, compare and contrast what we live through. When someone wants to be a senator, any elected office really, no one really, maybe their family wants them to be, but no, the community says, oh, we want you. They say, hey, I want to run for office, and this is what I'll do for you. Please vote for me. I mean, a short political science lesson in one sense, but pretty much that's what's happening. Now, with a real person who's a real deep person, king, and he's smart and wise, and he doesn't need a job. He has the money. He doesn't need the money for the job. So he would say, I don't need the job. Who needs a headache? And really, a lot of political offices are surely a lot of headaches. But on the other hand, instead of the headaches that people would want him saying, we want you. No, don't stay in your house or be wise and read books or whatever. You have to deal with us. And, well, what do I need the headache for? What do I need the trouble for? It says, well, we want you. We need you. So therefore, that would, I don't know if it applies to like I say, to society around us. On the other hand, that it does apply to Jewish life and Judaism. Meaning that we have to implore upon the Almighty, we want you to be the king. And but that comes with two different options too. If you want the king, well, then you're going to have to do what he says. Again, I mean, just to put in perspective, comparing and contrasting that, of course, if there's a bill, you have to pay taxes. You can say, I don't like the taxes. I think they're ridiculous. Hey, it's the law and you pay the taxes. You can vote the other way and get a candidate that says they don't want so many taxes. Fine, that's your right, but you do follow the law. But when it comes to the king, it's not like, I don't like what they're doing. I don't like what he's saying or trying to accomplish. I'm not going to listen. Or I don't like him. I'm going to write an editorial or an op-ed in the newspaper that the king's a schmo and he's not doing the right thing. He doesn't know what he's doing. Well, of course, in America, you have a perfect right to do that. But when it comes to a king, that you have to listen. So you want a king and you want a good leader, but on the other hand, you have to listen to whatever he says. But then there's an obligation of the king to the people also. And the king has to say, hey, can't just, it's a few percent unemployment. Some people are hungry. Well, most people aren't hungry. Most people are employed. I'm not going to care about every individual. You care about numbers. Do I have 50% on my side? I'll get reelected. I mean, again, it's making a little bit simplistic, but on the other hand, it's a lot of truth in that. And that one line of, again, political science lesson in one line. But in any case, that the king is supposed to care about every individual specifically, not just one, the majority of people. They have to think of what the people want specifically and what they need. So that's a deeper idea. Now I'm going to even go even one level deeper to another level deeper. That what is the reason for the whole creation of the world? It's a big question, of course. Why are we here? Why did God create the world? If you say there's evolution, which again isn't according to Judaism, that some big bang blew up this, nova, some sun or whatever blew up, and then it made amoebas, and again, we know the idea of evolution, and we happen to be here. It's just an act of nature, just a fate. Well, again, we don't say that. Again, you can't philosophize too much. Just if it's fate, it just blew up and you came about after millions and billions of years old, then, what's the purpose of life? But Judaism says no, that a human being is not just a sophisticated gorilla, that we are human beings, we're special in our own right, and we think and we speak and we communicate and we build. There's a lot of positive things about human beings. Again, not to get into now, but there is free choice, that a people can destroy and bomb and hurt people. But on the other hand, there is the good side of human race, that we're making life better for many, many people. He says, all right, but what is ultimately the purpose? So the answer would be that God, for whatever reason, and we can't understand God, there's so many things in the world we don't understand. It's a universal question which comes up in all our classes, why bad things happen to good people. But certain times you can understand it. It's not the issue now that we can get into it. We've discussed it before. I'm sure we'll discuss it again in the future. But in any case, that's what we do know, that God says, Ana Amlach in Hebrew, I want to be the king. Why should he be the king? He doesn't need to be the king. He's God. Whatever reason, he had a desire to be here in the lower world. Sometimes desires do not have any reason. You can have like normal food. You say, why are you eating your vegetables and bread? Well, I want to be healthy. Why are you eating some ice cream? Do you need ice cream? No, you don't need ice cream. I want ice cream. I desire ice cream. So there's no reason. You can't just sit there figuring out why a person would want ice cream. It's the same thing with God. Certain things you can understand, and many, many things you just don't understand. In any case, God says, I want to be the king, and therefore that is really part of the whole creation of the universe, that the Almighty should be king. This is very important, because even though that I did say at the beginning that we're talking about Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year, and the Jewish people go to synagogue and pray, but really everything in the world, surely every human being is important in the world. And that is also part of the idea of God's creation, that every human being should understand that there's God in the world. Again, we're talking about, there is, maybe we could say, an evolution of thought. In the olden days, you're talking olden days, not 100 years ago, thousands of years ago, people would bow down to statues, that they would think that that's God's power. There's a big statue, even these little statues. Again, it's very interesting. We are in the Capital District in Albany, and a person can go down to the Historical Museum on Washington Avenue, and there is a nice Egyptian collection. You see what they're bowing down to, little figurines of cats and whatever, animals, whatever. This is thousands of years ago, of course, but really people did believe these things had powers. And the real power in the world is the Almighty, that he's in charge of everything. Yes, there are intermediaries that, things, you say, oh, God, give me some food. So food doesn't come on your doorstep. You have to work, but ultimately after you've gone shopping and you've made the food, you say, thank God for the food, because everything is dependent on God. Everything could go wrong. God forbid we shouldn't know from it. But things that a lot of people are starving in the world, a lot of people are sick in the world. So when things come your way, you have to recognize the goodness and thank God for that. So that's interesting, that the Jewish people, and I do emphasize that it's not just a Jewish thing that there's a God in the world, or monotheism. It is for all human beings. And really the truth of the matter is, it's for everything in the world. Everything in the world has its own life force, a very specific life force, that you could say, well, there's grass in the world, or there's trees in the world. Says, well, there are a bunch of trees. Like you go to the Adirondacks or anywhere around, thank God in Capital Districts, there's such nice trees in the world. And in our area, and you say, well, there's a bunch of trees. It's a nice forest. Again, who would care if there's one less tree or not one less tree? You would know the difference. I think not. But Jewish philosophy really extends, and this is very mystical, that there's a godly force for every individual, and I underline individual, creation in the world. And that means every single tree, not just a bunch of trees or a forest of trees, but every single tree in the world has its special life force, every blade of grass, every snowflake. I mean, obviously that's for trillions and trillions. There's 7 billion people, let alone how much grass and plants in the world. I don't know the number, but I'm sure it's trillions. But everything has its specific divine idea from God. Now, this is very interesting in its own right, because tying that into the idea of kingdomship, meaning again for probably the fifth time, I've been comparing society. So when a president cares, I mean, all right, let's say that he does care, or hopefully he does care about what's happening in the country, but he doesn't hear about somewhere in Hicksville in the United States that needs an operation or needs some food. Again, he's talking very general. I mean, no human being can. No cut against a president who can think of, like in our country, 320 million people in the country. Who could think about every individual? It's impossible. But we're not dealing with human beings. We're dealing with God. And therefore, that is the beauty of everything. People think, again, I get so many questions being a rabbi, says, you really think God cares about everybody, everything in the world? Don't you think God is great? Yes. Don't you think he has bigger and better things to do to care about, again, someone's hangnail on their toe, in the middle of the world over here? I mean, no one could care about that much. But philosophically, that's totally incorrect. And theologically, it is also incorrect. And Saadia Gaon, who lived about 1,000 years ago, he answered this question. If you think that God is infinite, and people granted, God is infinite and great, but he does not have the power of finite, meaning he doesn't care about little things in this world. I mean, to us, it may be a big thing, but like that, even in a skyscraper, you look down, and everybody's like ants, and surely from space, you can't even see where the human beings are altogether a few miles up, and surely on the moon, you don't even think of people. So again, from any bigger perspective, surely from God's, we're really like little nothings in the world, infinitesimal creations, and then even our little things and in our human beings. You think God, but if you think that God doesn't care about finite, you're taking away from his greatness. You say, well, he could only be infinite, but he cannot be finite. So what do you mean he cannot be? God is everything. So God also can be and is care about the finite. He's creating every finite individual creation constantly, and on top of that, he is also just he's bringing out a deeper idea where he cares about everything. Then you could say, all right. According to Judaism, the world was created 5,777 years ago. Fine. You could say, well, he created the world, and that's another kind of false philosophy where a person would say that, let's say I call it the spinning top philosophy. You spin the top, all right, you go away from it, it's going to last a half a minute or a minute at the most. So, all right, but this is God. That's a human being that spins the top. Maybe you're talking about God. He could spin the world, spin the earth. And how do you like that? It would go on for thousands and even you can say millions of years. What's going to stop? So therefore, God made the world, you could say, and maybe he stopped dealing with the world. Doesn't make a difference to him anymore. He went around like a kid, bigger and better toys to play with, went to another world. People do think that, and again, that is not the Jewish idea of thinking about it. And the reason for that is, again, using logical ideas behind not just saying just believe. Judaism does have belief, of course, but not just believe, that there's logical ideas in this world. Now, if I would hold up, now we have a nice plant here. If I would hold it up, I would hold it up for 1,000 years. Say, well, I would think after 1,000 years it would stay in place. But we surely know that I don't want to crash it down, but if I release my hand, it would totally drop. Even if I held it for 1,000 years up, it's going to fall down. So the world itself is not natural. It's really not a natural world. There wasn't a world before. It wasn't there from, even if people want to say millions and billions, a gazillion years ago, it really wasn't around. Even scientists will admit to that. And surely Judaism says that it was a creation over 5,000 years ago. So logically, just like my hand holding up to plants, that if I would hold it up for 1,000 million years, whatever number you want to use, and I would drop it after 1,000,000 years, it would drop. and it wouldn't be held up in space. And that's the second law of thermodynamics, where certain things, if you have a hot cup of coffee, it's not going to stay hot if it's sitting on my table. Maybe if you keep a fire under it, it's one thing. But if I put on my table a piping hot cup of coffee, it's not going to stay that way at all. So that's the same thing in the world. It's an unnatural being that we're here. So if it's unnatural like that, the plant sits on the table, say fine, normal plant sits on the table. But what if it's 3-4 inches above the table? That is not normal. And therefore, it needs my hand to keep it up. My hand's not there, plant comes down. It's the same thing with the world. If God doesn't keep his thumb, if we want to use that idea, on the world and keep on creating it every second, the world wouldn't exist. That's a very interesting logical idea where God has to be, not that he did create the world, he did, and it keeps on creating the world every single second. And that's why, isn't it the beauty of it? And this, talk about the ramifications for it. It's again, we're talking philosophy, we're talking theology, we're talking monotheism, all's fine and good. But what does it mean to us? It means that God cares at every second what we do. Just like a parent over a 2-year-old, you don't just let them walk on the sidewalk by themselves. The parent is constantly right behind them when they're walking and they're falling. They'll pick them up. They'll direct them. They just don't let the 2-year-old go by themselves outside. Even in a house, you have a gate up. You don't let them walk around. Just do whatever they want. They can get hurt. So here we have God right on top of us, if we want to say that, and constantly looking over our shoulder, right being us, creating us truthfully, and just being sure that everything goes right and everything has a meaning. Well, of course, it leads us back, which I said I didn't want to deal with, why bad things happen to good people, which that would be the question, that if God's on top of us, he should feed us and everything should be good. We shouldn't have any ever problems. Nothing bad should happen to us. Again, just even maybe since I mentioned it twice and really is a subject for itself, but suffice it to say, even though, like I say, it does deserve its a whole show in its own right, that what's really bad, and given the classic example where things go bad but it's really good, and because you could see it for yourself, is that someone gets fired from a job. And it happens many times, and people complain, I don't have a job. Says, well, you got to look for a new job. Look for a job, and maybe it does take a month or 2 months, whatever, and then they say, wow, this was a better job that I had. I would have been stuck in the old job for 20, 30 years, whatever, and now I'm in a new job, and it pays more, and it's a better job. I'm more happy with this job. So that's almost like, classic in that sense, where sometimes people do see, I'm not saying all the time, but certain times they see, hey, something's zonked, something went wrong, and then say, well, it's the best thing. You always have those stories that always comes out that, oh, dang, I missed the plane. Oh, I missed the train. And then they find out that the train or plane crashed, God forbid. And then there's always these interviews. Oh, I missed it for 15 minutes. I was late. Dang, and you're mad and all angry about missing the train or the plane. And in the end, you say, oh, God, thank God that I missed the plane or train. So you always have these ideas, not saying you're going to find the meaning in everything. I know enough people, and cry to me and complain to me that things aren't going well. And, you have to have faith that things will get better. Certain times we don't see how it's getting better, but then there's a whole different dimension, as we were talking about before, that there is a level of we call it the Olam Haba. There are spiritual worlds, and certain things are special in the next world that we just can't conceive of in this world. It's very interesting for me. I know a rabbi, I'm teaching, I'm talking right now, but it does say in the Ethics of Our Fathers, you learn from everybody. And that's who's really smart. It says you're someone who learns from everybody. And I do, and I try to. Someone has an interesting story, an interesting profession, interesting idea in the Torah. And I do listen and I do learn. So this person was a scientist who came to our house, and we always get into deep discussions. And this was one of these discussions. Like I say, it always seems to come up why bad things happen to good people. And he says, I'm going to explain to you how it's working on a scientific idea. Let's hear. I'm not a scientist. I'm a rabbi. So he's saying that if you're on the table, if you can see that, you're on the table, all you could see is that level, what's coming at you at that table. You know, a foot away, an inch away, and that's all you perceive. What's to my left, what's to right. What's above it, you cannot even see, you cannot even perceive it. It's like two-dimensional. We're on a two-dimensional world. All we can see is the plane that we're looking at, nothing higher. So he's saying if someone's on a high level and that they're coming down or they're touching down here, they have a whole reason for coming down here, and maybe to our perception does not see it and not understand it. So he even says even on the scientific levels, there are higher dimensions, higher ideas, and sometimes they conflict with our idea. There's wars or hunger, like I said. We know there's enough problems in the world. But on the other hand, we do pray, and that goes back to Rosh Hashanah. Very interesting idea. There's existential philosophy, which again is not Jewish philosophy. Many people have that idea. It'll be what it'll be. It'll be good as good. And in a way, they'll back themselves up with what I just said. You say it's bad, but God is good, and everything will come out all right. It doesn't make a difference what we do. Again, this is not at all a Jewish idea at all. That if there's a problem, we have to find a solution, or at least try, or at least pray for something. Maybe you can't do anything. A person's very sick. You're not a doctor. What are you supposed to do? But at least you can pray and implore, again, God's mercy on people that they should get better. So that's a very important idea. That there's a story in the Talmud, and we have a few more minutes, so I always like telling my stories. I know people enjoy my stories. That actually, again, in the Gemara, in the Talmud, it's only just a few lines. But within a few lines of Torah is incredible depth. And this is one of them. So the Jewish people were, people know 2,000 years ago, invaded by Rome. And they lived with Romans 200 years. A little, sometimes it was good, sometimes it wasn't so good. They destroyed the temple. But in any case, they did talk with each other and they lived with each other. And the Romans actually were debating with the rabbis. They want to say, what's your religion? We have our Roman religion. Again, there's Zeus and Shmuz and all their idols. And they were trying to find out what was all this Judaism about. So, of course, Judaism plays a major emphasis on charity, which means just basically someone doesn't have, they're hungry, they're starving, they need clothes, and you help them out. It's a major tenet in Judaism. Jewish people are always very charitable. So he says, well, I take offense with that. What's wrong? He says, God made that situation that way. You know, you say everything's from God, so he made there's hunger and there's people who are sick. So if God wants it that way, why are you interfering with God's plan? If you want someone to be poor, let them be poor. What are you making them a good meal for, and that they should feel good about themselves? So Rabbi Akiva says, I'll answer you. It's a good question, but I'm going to answer you. Rabbi Akiva is one of the biggest sages of Judaism. And he says, if you have a son, a child, and you sent them away from land and they need help, wouldn't you want someone to take care of them? Again, it's an interesting idea where for whatever reason, and again, we don't know the reason why people are poor, they're hungry, but maybe that's even half a reason. You have to look at yourself, hey, that's an opportunity to do good. Why that person's poor, I don't know. He doesn't deserve it, and I don't know. But on the other hand, someone who's starving, that's my opportunity to help them out. In any case, that's Rosh Hashanah. The main thing of Rosh Hashanah, we should plead for a good year. There are three major blessings we have for children, which means healthy children, good children. Children should go in the right way. Chaya literally means life, but means health also, health and life. Mazoni means sustenance. We should all have sustenance, and all these things should be reviche in an abundant way, and it should be for all of us. Thank you very much.